do that. Okay. And again, housekeeping, keep yourself on mute if you aren't speaking, but then remember to unmute yourself if you do want to speak up. And then as far as questions, I'll probably pause throughout and just ask if there are any questions about a specific section. But then at the end of the entire presentation, I plan on asking, you know, if there are any questions, and then we can go through that before we wrap up. What I think the last class, what was helpful for some folks, if you have a transaction that you want me to look at and you're okay with sharing with the class, or maybe some people may drop off at that point, feel free to just let me know, because usually that's a good example for others. But that's really it. A little bit about myself. I became a licensed real estate agent, and I'll show you guys who I am. Hi, everybody. I became a licensed real estate agent in March of 2016. At the end of 2019, I decided to go ahead and get my broker's license. And when there was some leadership openings at Norman and Associates this year, I just kind of volunteered myself, and I've been enjoying looking at everybody's contracts and helping everybody out. So outside of real estate, I have almost 10 years of experience as an IT project manager. I'm somewhat of a tech nerd. So technology, compliance, cost, time management, risk assessment, that's kind of like my world. Some other fun things, I'm a landlord, which that has only been for a few years. I love karaoke. I sit on a couple boards that are related to real estate as well. The Empire Board of Realtors as a communications chairperson and secretary. And that's pretty much me. So I'm going to jump straight into like agency agreements. One thing I wanted to ask everybody first, and I think I can get to a chat window. Yeah. So on a scale from 1 to 5, everybody, I just want 5 being the best, 1 being the lowest. I want to know how comfortable you guys are with contracts right now.
0.
So if you could just go ahead and drop them in there for me. Scale from 1 to 5, 5 being high. Contract confidence, we'll call it. Our confidence in contracts. Appreciate the honesty too with the 0. Love it. Okay. Any more? Oh, got a couple other people to admit in here. Okay. I don't see any more. Any more? Okay, Ternisa, I see you going beyond my 5. Any others? All right. So we got a mixed group. Another question I like to ask is, what about dot loop? So scale from same 1 to 5, 5 being high. How do we feel about dot loop? Okay. Keep them coming, keep them coming. I like the half points. Thanks for that. All right. So we got some strong ones. All right, cool. So for some of you, this stuff might be a reminder, but for most of you, I think it'll be pretty helpful, just based on the numbers. Thanks everybody for participating there. So let's go straight into, all right, we met a client. We wouldn't be shaking their hands right now, just because of what's going on in the world. But I think the one thing that I didn't talk about in the last contract class was agency agreements. So the ones that we're most popular with would be, of course, the buyer brokerage agreement. There's an exclusive version and a non-exclusive version. Hold on, let me get somebody else in here. The exclusive is obviously, you know, nobody but me. Non-exclusive, there may be multiple agents working with a specific person. So typically with all of the agency agreements, you have the option to do exclusive or non-exclusive. Exclusive would, of course, be the strongest one. Same thing with listing agency, that would be your seller representation agency agreement. And again, it comes exclusive, non-exclusive. So those are the 2 biggie ones, the buyer and the seller. But then there's also lease listing. So say if you wanted to list someone's home as a rental, there's also representing a renter. There's also referral agency agreements. And then there's also a FIS, the for sale by owner, which is technically not an agency agreement, but what I've noticed looking at some contracts where there is no listing broker, the person representing the buyer may not sign any of the listing broker side, so that the whole contract would just be missing a listing broker, when technically you are representing that specific seller, but as a customer. So you would choose versus client, a customer, and then the agreement that goes with that is called the authorization to show unlisted property. You guys are familiar with that. I could pop it up, but it's in the GAR loop, your GAR master document, so you can just pull that up. But instead of leaving all of the signatures for the listing broker or listing agent blank, it should be you, but not as a client. You will be representing them as a customer. So for me, as soon as I get a client, I'm creating a loop for them. So I put like tips throughout here, which I think is pretty helpful, but of course you can create your own flow, your own systems. I just know what kind of works for myself. So new client, new loop, new agency agreement. At this point, I might pull up some other documents just as preparation. So for example, if within that agency agreement, you checked off that I'm going to protect yourself when purchasing a home or a new construction or a distressed property. That's a good time to start sharing some of those documents. You may also, from a buyer perspective, pull your pre-approval letter. Another thing, inspection disclosures. It's okay to put TBD in the address and just have them sign that. Just make sure that the checkbox is checked. I'm going to share my full screen. I'll do that in a second. If you guys want me to pull up the actual document that I'm talking about, is everybody familiar with the inspection disclosure? It should be preloaded in your loop when you start. Yes, no, maybe so.
No, I'm not familiar.
Not familiar.
Not familiar. Let me stop sharing and then I'm gonna share my screen so you can see. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, but just bear with me. And again, my screen is huge, so you might see like stuff on my desktop and everything. All right, so agency agreements. Let's jump in here. So this is an inspection disclosure, which basically lets your buyer know that they have the right to an inspection. And it's essentially a CYA for us so that we're covered, and we've let them know that you can do, you could have everything inspected. I mean, for construction, roof inspections, it just kind of covers us here. So in order to get paid at closing, I need to see either the inspection disclosure or a copy of the inspection. I'll look for either or. But in the beginning, when you're setting up with that with a new customer, I personally would just come out here, put the name of my buyer in here, put address TBD, and understand if they're willing to do the inspection or not, and then have that disclosure already ready, even if we haven't found a house first, what this document looks like. Okay. Flipping back, I'm gonna try to make this bigger. Okay, so that's what the inspection disclosure looks like. You guys know with the pre-approval letter, you just want to ask them for a copy. Me personally, my car doesn't start until I see a pre-approval letter, but you know, again, you can work how you like. For me, I need an inspection. I mean, I need a pre-approval letter and I need an agency agreement before my car starts and we start, you know, hanging out together. But then I also, like I said, throw in the consumer brochures and I throw in that home inspection disclosure just to get it over with. From a seller perspective, you might want to ask for the disclosures up front. For example, the seller's property disclosure, your community association disclosure. I personally love when I can pull these documents from the listing directly, like straight out of the MLS, and already, I can, you know, label them exhibit A, exhibit B versus having to request them during the offer, you know, time. So I think awesome agents will already have these disclosures available to you in the MLS. So this is an opportunity in the beginning before you even, again, I haven't even gotten in the car yet. Well, if I was working with a seller, we don't have to get in the car. But before we even get going, just get as much information as you can. Another good one here, I should have put stars by it, is this legal description. A lot of times, agents may rely on the listing agent to provide this, but then it just may slip through the cracks. And so this might be like a warranty or the actual legal description exhibit. Again, I can flip back over to dot loop, show you what this looks like. This little baby right here. So here you can just kind of disclose what the legal description is, but if you want to use a warranty deed or something that the seller has provided, just make sure everybody's initials are on it. But I think this is a good thing to get, you know, upfront. Like, we're establishing our relationship as an agent and client. So let's get you going the right way, and then we can put it on the market. And then they can have the buyers agents, they already have the documents they need, and you can get some nice clean offers versus having to stop and get them all the documents that they need. All right, pop it back over here. All right, so I love this picture because it kind of shows what we have to go through today. I don't know if anybody has actually worn heels with these, but I've seen it done, and so I just had to throw this in there. But okay, now we have gone out, we have picked a house, and this is kind of where the meat of our documents come into play. So before I leave this section, I want to pause and ask if there's any specific questions on agency agreements.
Because like your mom drives the Dodge Caravan and you eat breakfast at school and you pay for it.
Ooh, I got 3 people waiting. Any questions? And remember to keep yourself on mute if you are not speaking.
When you spoke about the inspection list, where could you locate that? I don't see like a listing section in templates. I only see buying.
So I have admin rights right now. So let me switch to myself. Yeah, let me switch to myself. Just ignore these folks. But say if this is a new one. This is a new purchase one here. So right here, and I organize these for you guys. So typically I keep them in order. So basically just the same way I was just talking through this, these first 3 would be your first babies as far as the buyers are concerned. You may or may not share this. That's why it's kind of optional, but this is required. You definitely want to get the agency agreement, and then this inspection disclosure is the next one.
I see. So they're inside the loop already. Okay.
Yep. It comes preloaded in there. Yeah. I try to keep that nice and clean. Sometimes I may go in and like event, I don't know, depending on how long you've been here. At first, this didn't have fields in it, so I figured out how to add fields. And so it would just pull from your dot loop information, which I think helped a lot of people get it done. Because before you had to draw the box and, you know, type it in and draw another box, it was a lot going on. But yeah, that's where you can find it. And then since I'm here, I'll just bring up the buyer. So from this section right here, these answers, regardless of the agency agreement that you're using, it's always dual designated and sub agency. So make sure you note that. Dual designated and sub agency. Those are the agency relationships that are not offered by Norman and Associates. You'll always be an independent contractor. The rest of this is kind of straightforward. As far as your commission, from a buyer standpoint, 3% of the sales price, and then you can choose whether the buyer will be responsible if you don't get that or not. You know, you kind of make that up. But this is probably the most important section of the agency agreements, period, really. And then down here, once you get past all the legal jargon, this is where you check off these brochures. Now, if you came in here and checked all these brochures off, I'm gonna look to prove that you shared each one of these brochures. So just make sure you keep this in mind. Like if you say that all of these have been received by the buyer, I have to verify that each one of these have been received by the buyer. So you might not want to go in here and click all of them, maybe like 3, good, maybe just this first one for the buyer in the beginning, and then just make sure you have signatures. And this is the second important part of this document, is the fact that it's binding. If your buyer is not, the greatest reader, you might want to just put the date in there beforehand. That's what I do. Any other questions about the agency agreements? And again, those are preloaded in each one of the loops. I would have to create a new loop to show you the listing one, but depending on which type you choose, and when you go to add a new loop, if you choose purchase, all of the buying, documents will load up in there. If you choose listing for sale, all of the documents that you need to load up in there. Same thing for listing, lease, and real estate other. That one's kind of, I don't know what's in there. Maybe referral documents, not sure. But most of these top 4, listing for sale, listing for lease, purchase, and lease, if you come in and create a loop and you choose the type, it should preload. It goes back to that view that I had where I could see the templates. So yeah, that's how that works.
I have a question.
Sure.
I guess I don't know as much as I thought I did, because I have a question about the leasing one. I had one the other day, and I wasn't quite sure, because I know that the buying commission is kind of standard, but the leasing one is not. So if we haven't found a property yet that we're looking to lease, what do you recommend that we put there for the commissions?
Okay, so for, are you talking about a lease tenant, or like if you had a client who you're putting their actual house up for lease? It sounds like you're talking about a tenant.
No. Yeah, a tenant.
Okay. So you want to see, you're talking about the tenant agency. So similar in your instance of Outlook, you should be able to go to GAR Interactive Documents and you can search inside of there. So here, if I open this one up, this is the document that you're referring to. So let me scroll down here. So you're talking about in this section right here. So
yes.
Good question. For the tenant agencies, I usually put something like $20 or $500 right here. And the reason that I do that is because I like to focus myself on rentals that will at least make me $500. So that's just how I do it. But I do know that, especially right now with everything that's going on, people are putting like all types. I mean, one might say 150, 250, 300, 400, 500. So it's like, it's kind of hard to pin that down. So I do understand that. But I think what saves you is this second sentence, right? So if the owner does not agree to pay you that, then the tenant has to, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, because that's what I was gonna say. If we do put the 500 and they only, like, I saw one today that only paid 150. So at that point, it just depends on what we put in the second part, because it will hold the buyer responsible or not.
Right. It's similar to the buyer. It's similar to the buyer section, the buyer commission section, where it's just more obvious that you're saying, like, if I don't get this 3%, you are responsible. Here, you could leave the other part blank, but this is an excellent question, but I personally usually just throw in 500, or if I've gotten a sense of some of the rentals that they're looking at. But it's just very hard to say. It's very hard to say. I don't think anybody really does 20 to 25% anymore. People have gotten a lot cheaper recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
what really is going to end up mattering for this particular type of transaction is the leasing commission agreement between you and the listing broker.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
But this is just, you establishing some type of understanding with them. But some people do retainers. So, I mean, it just all depends on how you're going to work yourself. But me personally, I would put $500 and I wouldn't make them responsible. I'm going to work as hard as I can. I mean, but it's not my fault that, it's not my fault or their fault that the seller is being cheap.
Yeah, it's only paying $100.
Yeah, like I don't really know what to do with that, but let me just go ahead and move you in, Okay. Any other questions about agency agreements before I move into like the purchase contracts? That was a good question though, for sure. I do the same thing for the lease listings also. And some of that guidance I might have gotten just directly from Jeremy. He doesn't want us to be the discount agents, right? So a minimum of $500 is a great place to start. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna move on, but if questions come up again, I'll pause again in the future. So congrats, new contract. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the compliance process so you understand how this works. So when an associate agent is tied to an MLS status change in either Georgia MLS or FMLS, I have alerts that come to me. So if I think that was Ternisa, I'm just gonna pick on her because it's easy to pick on her. If she went and put a listing out there and marked it active, as long as it's attached to an agent that belongs to us and there's a status change, an alert is going to come to me. So typically what I will do at that moment is go and look for those early items that I mentioned to you before. So like in that case, it might be a listing agreement. There's no reason that a home should be marketed by us and we don't already have a seller, listing agreement that's bound and available, just in case something was to happen, right? So I would just kind of go in there. It feels kind of intrusive for me, but I just think it's proactive. It lets you know, like, hey, don't forget something. I may say like, don't forget, or congrats on your new listing, and just approve what you have. So that is kind of how it starts, but ultimately it is your responsibility to submit your loops and your transactions for review. I think that's Latasha. I might need you to go on mute, honey. Sorry. It's okay. Let me add someone else in here. Okay. Yeah, so ultimately it's your responsibility. However, I will nudge you. There's 2 points where I will nudge you. The first one is going to be when the alert comes through and it says, something is going under contract with your name or something is active with your name. I'll nudge you there. And then there's also a point in time where Jeremy or someone who was previously in Bridget's role will send me a list of all the properties that are closing this week. So at that time, I'm focused on getting you guys paid at the closing table. So even if you haven't submitted it to me, I may just go ahead and submit your stuff so that I can share with you, like, hey, in order to get paid this week, you need to do this, that, and the third. And then you could reach out to me. We can walk through it together either way. But I just wanted to kind of touch on that. So like this is after binding, usually an alert comes to me and I get in there. Key documents I'm looking for when you're working with a buyer. Definitely agency agreement. I put these double check marks next to some of the items that you really should already have in there. So it should be like you double checking. So that inspection disclosure, again, either or, I'll take an inspection report or an inspection disclosure. But one of them I have to have. A fully bound purchase and sale agreement. And again, I'm going to get into these documents. I'm scan over each one of them in a second. But just high level, you want the PSA fully bound. eventually, copy of earnest money deposits, any and all exhibits, addendums, amendments. And some of this is a repeat even for the seller, but that would include closing attorney. If you are allowing a closing attorney to hold your earnest money, there's a whole other document that you need to have signed by the actual closing attorney saying that they agree to do this. They agree to act as the earnest money holder for you. Disclosures, I have them abbreviated here. Seller's property disclosure. Like I mentioned, if you're working with a seller, have them do that up front. Community association, same thing. And then any amendments, if there was any price adjustments. I need to write an amendment right now that basically says that the pool table gets to stay behind for 14 days, which is weird, but that's weird, but I need to make that known and clear that the seller is leaving behind a pool table. Any property concerns amendments, all of that stuff, your instructions to attorney, those are the key documents there. From a seller, it doesn't differ as much, but definitely want that agency agreement. You want to see in here, I'll slow down here. So when you're representing a seller, one thing that I notice a lot of our agents like to do is create different folders in .loop. So I have a perfect example of this. Create different folders as you receive offers, right? But I would recommend that you archive them. So this is a 24-unit apartment building. And so I may represent, you know, there's like so many folders behind here if I was to archive them, like if I show the archive folders. But, sorry, my phone is ringing. One of the things that you may want to do is kind of bottle up your different offers. You know, this person here, this person there. And then that way, if you didn't accept this offer, you could just archive that entire folder and make it go away. And then when it's time for me to get in here, I'm only looking at active things. So yeah, that's a good idea to do that when you're representing a seller. But so you would have your official PSA, say if you got multiple offers, copy of earnest money. The inspection report, I made this red because it's a bit weird for me. Technically, the buyer doesn't have to share the inspection report with the seller, but I think it would concern me if there wasn't one, or say if the buyer on the other side declined to do an inspection. I think I would recommend in a situation like that, that you guys go ahead and get the buyer on the other side to do an inspection disclosure, just so that doesn't come back and bite us. But then same thing here, all exhibits, all addendums, all amendments, everything that you have checked off on the purchase and sale contract, I'm gonna look for. And if I can't find it, I'm not gonna approve the loop. For anybody interested in being a broker in life, as part of your GAR membership benefits, you actually get this little checklist. If you want to just kind of print this off and have it in your personal space, we do have an abbreviated version in each one of the loops to kind of help you out, but this is like as thorough as it could get as far as making sure you have like all of the things that you need. One of our agents, she actually makes a copy of the buying checklist and uploads it, and she gives me like excellent updates. I'm not saying you need to do all of that, but I think that you should get in the habit of doing your own compliance review before you submit it. And there are artifacts out there to help you do that. The checklists that come pre-populated within your .loop once you choose the .loop type, but then also this checklist and contract reviews, and there's a couple different documents that you might find. One day I'm gonna clean that up, but this is a good one. And then the checklists that are actually pre-populated in the loop that you choose. So I'm gonna click this. I tried to make this easy for me, and it didn't really make it easy for me. Any questions while I pull up the 2020 purchase contracts?
Hop in, and I want to tell everybody thank you for all the text message. Thank you for all the email.
Oh, fuck.
Terin is going to do a phenomenal job of really making sure y'all understand
know if it's just me, Jeremy, but I think you're going in and out. Is it just me?
No, he's going in and out.
Okay, all right. It's probably this connection I'm in, but I was basically just popping in to tell everybody thank you for all the love and support, the emails, the text messages that I've been.
Yeah, we're losing you, Jeremy.
Okay. Well,
We're losing you, but we love you. That's what I
Yeah,
think
we
you
got
want us
your
to
thanks.
say. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and keep going here. So right now I have the purchase and sale contract up. So regardless if you're working with a buyer or a seller, this is an important document. I have marked these up and shared a copy with our wonderful office manager. So definitely reach out to her for a copy, but I can also send these to you if you request them from me. And then I can also make that PowerPoint presentation available to everybody too. So I try to be organized. But as far as the things that I've highlighted, this is a huge miss. Like most of the time, the legal description is missed. And again, from a buyer standpoint, if you're working with a buyer and you check this off as you're sending your offer, because this is your document to submit an offer on, you use this document to submit an offer and then it comes back bound and now you're boom under contract. If you're going to select number one, just make sure you ask for it. Sometimes you might even want to ask for it beforehand, or it's an easy miss. And again, if I don't have a legal description, technically this is not a valid contract. So you may choose to do 3, which you just want to double check that information. And then if it's a condominium, you would need to attach the F204 condominium resale purchase and sale exhibit. One thing that I need to add to this is that if you do have, like, say, a warranty deed or some type of document provided by the seller, definitely get initials on that. If everything else looks good about your loop, I might just let you slide with that one. But technically, if we're doing this the right way, all parties should initial the warranty deed. So if you use an exhibit, if you use the actual, I'm gonna start hopping now too. If you use the actual exhibit that the GAR form exhibit, then of course everybody's going to have to sign that one. But if you're just using a warranty deed, then you should just drop some initials on it, just to make sure that you get acknowledgement from all parties that this was received. But you get initials already kind of pre-baked into this document. But again, if you're using something else like a warranty deed, you want to make sure you get initials from everybody on it. 2 and 3, we should all know how to fill that out. Those are important numbers right there. That's the most important numbers on here. Closing date at closing is kind of like the go-to check, put your date, put your closing check box there. But in the event that, say, the sellers want to occupy the space for a number of days after closing, then you would require another exhibit here. One thing I like to do too, as I'm going through my purchase and sale contract for the first time, you may want to start filling in the addenda that is required at the bottom here on this page, right? This is where I'm like looking for everything, and please label them like A, B, C, D, E. I've seen exhibit F401. That's not right. So just make sure you name them appropriately. I would just start with A and go on all the way through Z if you have to. But the purchase and sale contract does a good job of telling you where you need to do that. So for example, here with the legal description exhibit, here with the temporary occupancy agreement, here's a big one. So if Norman and Associates is holding your earnest money, then you do not need to have an exhibit. You do not need an agreement for the closing attorney to agree to hold the earnest money deposit. One thing though to note, until that process changes, you may need to pick up the earnest money from the office and take it to the closing, or if it's substantial enough to offset the commission that's owed to you, then you can collect that, later. The closing attorney would want to know, like, do you plan on using the earnest money towards the commission that's owed to you? Otherwise, you would need to go pick up the earnest money and take it to the closing attorney on the closing day. But in the other other scenario, say the Hall's law firm is holding the earnest money, then that's 2 documents you now need. So that's why I say it's easier for me to go through this and check off all of the different exhibits that I need and start labeling them and start getting really, as long as you stay organized throughout the entire process, it should be a lot easier. This first page of the purchase contract pretty much tells you everything that you need to have. So here it tells you F10 and F11 is required if you're using a closing attorney, period. This is all simple. Norman and Associates does hold earnest money. Check it. We can do wires as well. I'll probably ask Teresa to pretty up a document for our wire transfers, but yeah, we do hold. But then you can also choose as of offer date if you already have one. If it's within a certain days of going binding, this is pretty straightforward here. Due diligence, up to you. You can do 7-10, in normal circumstances, or if you want to be a little bit more aggressive and appeal to the sellers at that point, you may try something a little lower. Just make sure that your client understands the importance of, one, the due diligence period, and then the importance of that earnest money coming back if you change your mind or find out something about the property that you like during that time period. Lead-based paint. I highlighted this and put a reminder here, don't miss it. I don't know, but for some reason, maybe I try to think of it maybe because it's the skinniest row that's on a document, it gets missed a lot. So just keep that in mind. Again, depending on how many issues is going on with your dot loop, if I go and look at the property and see, oh, it was built in 2006, I might just add a check mark in there for you. But in the event that home was built in like 1920, then we definitely need to come back, and then you might get into a situation where you have to add initials, and then now your agreement is starting to look crazy. It's not as clean as it could be because there were things missed, which isn't fun. I put a note here as well. So as I mentioned earlier, if there is no listing broker, then you're representing the seller as a customer and require to show that authorization to show unlisted property. So I tried to make that clear here. And I may, iterate through this document and continue to send out updates to Jeremy so he can share with everybody. But this is important stuff. I got a question today from an agent who plans on listing her own property. And she wanted to know, like, do I just put it on the listing? Do I just put it, where do I put that information? This is where you would put that information. You'd also put it on the listing. It pretty much needs to go everywhere. If you are involved in that conver in that transaction, you would need to make everybody aware of the material relationship here. Time limit, this is good stuff. One thing, say if the other agent sent you this, just remember to come, if you're going to upload it into Dotloop and then put your initials in here for your client to sign, just remember that there's initials on the first page. They only need to touch technically the first page and the last with the signatures, but I see sometimes that these initials are missed now too. So everything else in here is really legal jargon. I have underlined, again, and I'm kind of assuming that you have a copy of this. I know Teresa sent a message out, but you guys can get your hands on this, but I just underlined some things that were added in 2020. So I won't get into that too much, but you'll see little red underlines. That's just additional verbiage that has been here in this section. These have gotten really big. There used to be like one empty page of special stipulations, but they've added a lot of little clarifying statements throughout with their update in January 2020. So if you're a more seasoned agent, you may be used to the Norman and Associates fraud disclosure, but they've actually expanded this contract to include, beware of cyber fraud. So that document is no longer required. So just FYI. Some of the checklists might still have it on there. I still need to get my hands on the actual original copy so that I can clean that up and then update the loops with a more up-to-date checklist. But Just FYI, there is already some protection or information about cyber fraud baked into the 2020 contract. This verbiage here was added, but kind of coming back to this exhibits and addenda, everything that you check here needs to be in the loop in order to go to closing, period. And then our favorite part, the binding piece, please fill this out. If you're unsure where to get this information, I know as a new agent, unless you got like a card from the office that has all this stuff already, you know, pre-populated inside of it. If you don't know like the MLS office code for the office, this is where I looked it up in the beginning of my situation, my real estate career. I would just go, let me move this out the way. I would just go search office and just put Norman in here. I use asterisk, and then there's not too many, so you'll know who it is. But all of that information is kind of here. The firm number is here. The office ID is here. Eventually, I may just add this in here, but the firm number is right there. That's that H75043 license. Then the MLS office code is NOAL01. Phone numbers you can find. If you have your own, again, I'm jumping around, guys, sorry. But if you have your account, your profile, your default profile up to date as far as the settings and everything, it should pull in automatically your, sorry, this is in my way. This should pull in automatically all of your, you know, information. So just make sure that you come in here and update your account. So your email address, your phone number, the fax, all of that information. If you just already have it in there, it'll start pulling it in. And I think that's helpful. But don't leave these blank. It's not cool. All right, scrolling down. This is just an additional signature page. Sometimes people get, they'll use the wrong additional. So say if there's like everybody and their mom is on this transaction, right? You would want to make sure you pull a signature page that says for buyers and sellers. And then you would of course have to check off the fact that there is an additional signature page, but just make sure you're using the right signature page, which is the one that has in parentheses underneath buyers and sellers. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to keep watching this admit section, but it can't. Okay. Finance exhibits. There are 4 or 5 of them. Conventional loan, your FHA loan, your VA loan, USDA, and then cash. So most of these are pretty straightforward. Based on how much they're putting down, you can kind of do the math to figure out their percentage of the purchase price. You know, terms probably 30 unless you can kind of go back to that pre-approval letter to fill this out. Interest rate should also be disclosed on their pre-approval letter. Fixed and institutional is kind of the go-to here. You want to make sure you put in the lender's information as well. And again, I've underlined just some additional protection that the GAR contracts committee added in 2020. I just like to be aware of some of the things they changed. Conventional, again, is pretty straightforward. You would just need to put in your finance contingency days, which goes right here, and then how much time they have to get an appraisal. So typically with a conventional loan, they may want to be a little bit more aggressive, like 21 days or something like that. With your FHA, this might take a little longer, you know, maybe 28 to 30 days. But again, I like to have a good relationship with my lender so I can know, like, hey, I might push you here with this one. Let me know if this is not going to work out. But for the FHA one, the important sections I've kind of written in already. So the purchase price of the PSA, there's of course with FHA or federally backed loans, it needs to appraise for the purchase price. Nothing less than that. So you need to make sure you put the purchase price that you put on the contract in this exhibit. And then you'd also need to put the FHA mortgage insurance premium in here. So when you're dealing with FHA loans, there's definitely more that you need to check off in here. Similar similar to like VA as well. And then again, you'll see some underlying stuff in here. Again, that's just added stuff that happened when they redid the contracts for January 2020. Just extra protection. Let me not go too fast here. Here in these sections, it's really up to you. I have go-to numbers in my mind about certain things, but really it should be dependent upon the property. For example, if you know that this is an FHA loan, and if you can tell just visually or from the inspection report that there may be some repairs required that FHA is not going to like, because of course the FHA wants to make sure that home is move-in ready, then you may want to make this number a little bit higher. Otherwise, if the seller is not responsible for those repairs, then your buyer is responsible for repairs. So, just use your best judgment as far as filling in these numbers. I think I always use 300 here. I don't know why, but for the public sewer, I think I always use 300. And again, the FHA piece, it just all depends on the current state of the home. If I think FHA is going to come back and say, you need to do this, do that, do this, that pool in the backyard doesn't work, it needs to go, then I might beef this number up a little bit more. VA, again, it's pretty similar to the FHA. So you have a funding fee to certain repairs. Here you'd also have to have the termite inspection. There's also the public water and sewer connection here. So just keep that in mind. Make sure those are completely filled out. All signatures need to be on everything. And then here's that all cash exhibit. The important parts here is you can either be A and or B. You cannot do A and B. So just make sure you're slowly reading this and make sure you understand what you're saying when you're doing the cash deals. Typically I may put like 3 to 5 days here in the verification of funds section. So within 3 to 5 days, the buyer will be obligated to provide that if I haven't already sent that with the offer. I always think that one is kind of silly, but I guess some people might accept the cash offer without proof that it's there. And then is this agreement going to be subject to an appraisal or not? Those are the buttons that you will need to make sure you check off there. And then who's responsible for checking or picking the appraiser in a situation like this when there's no lender. You just want to make sure that's clear. And then in the event that it is subject to an appraisal, you want to make sure you add days here. So with all of the finance exhibits, the important pieces is definitely having the lender information completely filled out to the best of your knowledge. Having your finance contingency clear, your appraisal contingency clear, any repair, monies that would need to be collected in the event that there is something that the lender requires, make sure all of that is clear. If this is an arm's length transaction and there's no relationship to buyer and seller, you want to make sure that you select this off, check this off. Mostly it's going to be, there's no relationship, but in the event that mother is selling a daughter or something like that, you'll need to make sure that you adjust that appropriately. Any questions about any of the finance exhibits? No questions here? Pretty straightforward stuff. All right, so that's like the most important exhibit, right? That's where money is coming from. Moving on down here, I've got the counter offer in here. So say if you submit an offer and then the seller counters, how that works. So if there is a counter, then I would accept all of your contracts without having counter signatures. But in some cases, if one party asks for a clean copy, then you would need to go back and still execute all of the different, fully execute the purchase and sale agreement, fully execute all exhibits. And then again, basically exactly what it's saying, clean copy of that agreement, you would just basically need to establish that. So this of course would still stand as, once this was all binding, once the counter offer agreement was binding, that is your binding agreement date. But in the event that there is a situation where someone requests a clean copy, you would need to go back and then make all the changes that are listed in these terms and conditions section, then go back and make it all nice and clean. I prefer clean copies personally. Here's those disclosures that we talked about from the seller's perspective, but if you're buying in a home with the community association, you would definitely want to have this. So this is here. And again, I've got some notes in here to just basically say that some sections were added, like a master membership and a master association. So I guess there's levels to this. And so you would just need to click, appropriately here. This is just extra clarity that they've provided here on this page, but all of this is pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about how to interpret some of the legal jargon when you're filling this out, just feel free to reach out to either myself or Shawana. We're both, pretty responsive, so we're ready to help you, make sure you're filling this out correctly. But pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah. Seller's property disclosure, again, same kind of deal. The seller is pretty much best suited to answer these questions. They live there. In the case that it's owned by an investor, they may decline to do this. In that case, it probably was disclosed on the MLS listing that there's no seller's disclosures available, property being sold as is, that kind of language, if you're familiar with seeing that. But if there is a property disclosure, they would just go through here and fill this out. Some people, depending on the savviness of your client, they may want to they may want to write this, so you can just print it, have them send it back to you, and then you upload it. And again, I'm just underlining and highlighting some new stuff. As times has evolved, there's like a car charging station. They added that in 2020, and above ground pools, making this a little bit more clear. And they added this verbiage as well. So as I mentioned earlier, I need to do an amendment about the seller leaving a pool table. Basically, this is if the pool table was not listed on this document that it was going to stay behind, then if the buyer has to trash that pool table, the seller is responsible as long as they are made aware within 30 days. So I like this extra verbiage here. Again, pretty straightforward stuff. This is typically the #1 amendment in the event that due diligence period does not need to change. So here, you would just put #1, and then just FYI, when you're doing amendments, you always want to start at #1 and just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You shouldn't have multiple #1s, multiple #2s. If I see something like that, I will note it and send you some love notes saying, hey, you got 2 #1s, 2 #2s. I understand that sometimes people start writing them and then maybe they didn't decide to use it, and then it just needs to be archived. So just keep it clean in there, and then I won't as long as I can understand what's going on, I won't have too much to say. But just make sure you start with #1 and number them accordingly from there. Same thing with those exhibits. Start with A, go through to Z if you have to. Amendments, start with 1, go through to, I don't know, the highest number I've probably seen is maybe 20 amendments, but however far you gotta go to keep it all organized. I wish I had the other closing attorney exhibit up first, but if you have the closing attorney exhibit part of your transaction, and I'll flip over and grab that, you are required to have this document. Basically, you just kind of pre-populate the contact information and then send it right over to the closing attorney and have them sign it. The Hall's law firm is pretty familiar with seeing this document. And then the document that would state that you need this, actually, I might have one ready. It looks like this. And again, if you look at the way that these are organized, I try to make it simple. It's kind of sequential in a sense. So if you have this closing attorney acting as holder, if you have this as a part of your purchase agreement, your offer, then that next document that's right there in the loop, you need to have that one as well. So again, I try to keep the loops in a organized way to make sense. But then say if you only doing conventional, come in here and just archive the stuff. You can just check it, archive them all at once. But just keep this clean, and your loops will be approved so much faster. It'll make so much more sense. This is a tricky one. So some people, if you notice, I highlighted this, the lead-based paint exhibit was updated in January with an error, and so they have to do it again in May. So if you're working with another agent and you see that, you might want to just kind of note, it gets weird in this section, like it doesn't make sense on the January copy. So just make sure that it always says May on the lead-based paint exhibit. But essentially, you're just gonna have your exhibit labeled again. This probably would be B, C, D, one of those. The seller takes care of this section, but your buyer takes care of this section. And then the way that this reads, initial all that apply below for A and B, and then initial one below for C. So this instructional text was a little bit weird in January, but they made the fix and made it make more sense in May. And then everybody's signature needs to go on this bad boy. So unfortunately, there are, different situations that end up stopping transactions from going through. And in the event that that happens to you, just make sure you get it in writing. The way that this is worded, if one side of the transaction, whether it's the seller or the buyer, is providing that unilateral notice, then they complete the first part. And I've highlighted the fact that it says or, right? Seller or buyer. But in order to disperse the earnest money, buyer and seller need to sign the bottom half. So typically it'll, some people will, and I mean, I understand it's like, this was part of my pipeline, dang it, but make sure that this is all completed fully, even before you even tell somebody to do anything with the earnest money. Tell it to, if I'm not sending anything until I get this whole thing filled out. So that bottom half needs to have 2 signatures, one from the buyer, one on the seller, before I send earnest money back, regardless of whose fault it is. So just make sure this is filled out correctly. And other than that, let me just pass through here. I think most of them are, listed in here. If you ever need additional guidance on how to write special stipulations, I added this in here too, which I really like this document. But it just basically gives you some language or verbiage to use for your special stipulations. So say, for example, if you're offering a home warranty, or if the seller is responsible for paying for a home warranty, all of that information you could find let me see if I can find it. You could find a sentence in here that would just basically make it easier for you to word your special stipulations properly. I feel like I went past it. Property condition. But there's just a list of, scenarios that you may want to make clear within your special stipulations, and you can just come in here and just borrow the way that it's worded. Yeah, I can't find the one I'm looking for. Yeah, so this is in here. I need someone to go on mute. I just did it myself. Let me see what else is in here. Good things to note. I think that's really it. Any other questions on the GAR forms? I know that was a lot, but again, you can get a copy of that document that I went through, and if I make any changes to it, I'll try to mark it up as much as I can to kind of help you, but having a copy of that somewhere in your inbox is going to be helpful. Any questions at all about contracts here?
Terin, I have a question. So I had a contract that didn't go through. My buyers pulled out. So the seller got to keep the earnest money. Mm-hmm. We did the unilateral, whatever that form is. Everybody signed it. Mm-hmm. And the house law firm was the ones that kept the earnest money. But I didn't do a form to disperse the earnest money back. Do I need to do that?
So you did this form, but you didn't do the bottom part?
No, I did. Can you scroll up to the top of your form? I don't even remember. I'm gonna pull it up. I know I did it, and then we both signed. Everybody signed it, but I don't remember doing that earnest money part.
Yeah, it's
Or
important
maybe it
that
was
you do.
different. I don't know. I'm gonna pull it up.
Yeah, no problem. If you want to share the address and turn you into a guinea pig, I can do that as well. It's up to you. Yeah, you definitely want to have both these sections filled out, because this just says, hey, I'm canceling, and I only need one party to tell you that. But the second part, this is saying, so you were probably writing here, you know, the party unilaterally terminated this agreement proposes that earnest money and other funds currently being held be dispersed as follows. You might put like mail to such and such and such, the seller, at this address. You know, it should be very, very clear what's happening to the earnest money after it's terminated. So, that needs to be agreed by both parties.
This is the one that I'm sorry, my printer started. I hope it's not loud. But this is the one that you helped me with all those contracts, right? My buyer ended up pulling out. The address is 570 Cedar Drive, and it's actually the first contract in there, and it's signed by everybody. Maybe I did do it, I just don't remember.
I can go look at it at some particular point. I won't do it now, but I'll remember to go back and look at that. But basically, both parties, if everybody signed it, it sounds like they had to sign it. Some people accidentally choose to have two people sign up here, but if it's two signatures up there and two signatures down there, that's just extra clarity for me. But technically, the only section that requires two signatures is the bottom.
I just pulled it up. I did sign it, and my buyer signed it, but the seller didn't sign it and send it back. And I know I sent it to her because initially I had the house to disperse the money to them, and she came back and corrected it. But she never sent me back a signed copy.
So you can go ahead and email her right now.
Okay.
And ask her for a copy of the termination and release agreement with the seller's signature in it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Kaylina?
No. Am I not muted?
Nope, that's why I called you out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm good.
All right, I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. All right, so that was kind of documents, key documents for buyer, seller, and typically it's those purchase and sale documents once we get past the agency anyways. So this is kind of before we get the keys. I kind of just did a brain dump right here. But all right, all parties have copies of contracts and amendments, but I put not including agency. I don't think anybody needs to have a copy of your agency agreement, but you and your client. The two people who signed that agency agreement are the only people who need to see that. Also, commission agreements. I do not share the instruction to closing attorney with anybody but the closing attorney and the listing agent. They'll see how much I made when it's time to get the closing disclosure and sign the ALTA at the closing table, you know? But did you schedule a day and time? Have you shared instructions? Do not send wire instructions. That should come straight from the lender. So make sure you are not caught out here sending out wire instructions for the closing attorney. Those should only and always come straight directly from the closing attorney. If you're like me and you just want all of your clients to have home warranties, then you might need to, if you're gonna do a home warranty, that information needs to be in the closing attorney's hands too. And this is before the closing. on or before closing day. They need to have the invoice for, usually the home warranty providers are really good at that though. Usually the portal that you use to order it will ask you who the closing attorney is, and you can just put their information in. They'll automatically just send it over there. But I like to keep a copy of that home warranty invoice and all of that. I look at that as like, you know, the benefit of working with me. I don't want a person to call me when they have, you know, HVAC issues. Call home warranty and they'll come out and fix it for $75. You know, that's kind of my thing. In the event that you are paying for this or seller agent is paying for this, note that you may need to update your commission agreement. You may need to update your instructions to the attorney, and you might need to go update your broker sumo disbursement agreement. What you don't want is to end up standing over the closing attorney's table and they're like, oh, your disbursement agreement doesn't match, you know, what is actually happening here. And then now you have to step outside of the closing room, call Jeremy or call someone who's in the office to get you a disbursement agreement that is updated and reflects what's going on really at the table. So closing preparation, this is kind of one of those things that just make sure you have. I could probably add a few more bullets here, like if it's a FHA loan, most of the time everybody needs to sign after that appraisal comes back that says, hey, this met the purchase price. That probably needs to be done on or before closing day. Usually I see it on the day of closing or maybe 3 days. The lender is required to send the closing disclosures to the consumer 3 business days before closing. So somewhere around there, that FHA amendatory clause document probably is going to come up. But this is just things to note as you get closer to closing. And then how to get paid, I'm just going to put this, I try to make it as simple as possible. Your broker transaction entry is updated. Everything in there is correct. If the sales price changed, you updated it. And that's kind of an example. If the sales price changes, update it immediately in Broker Sumo. So that way, when it comes time to kick out your commission disbursement agreement, it's already picking up on that change to what you're owed at the table. Your dot loop approval is there. Good statuses is approved and in final review. In final review, I sometimes use if I've been in your file like so many times, I know that you have everything in there. It's just waiting for like maybe the ALTA, the settlement statement, or you know, something like that, or maybe you're working on your last few amendments, but I know you're good. So those are two good statuses right here, approved and in final review. Return to agent and unsubmitted, those are not good statuses, especially if you are a couple of days away from your closing. There should be no reason why no one has looked at your contracts at that particular time. And there should be no reason why you haven't read all my love notes and made your modifications to the document so that we can get you that check that is going to be on this commission disbursement agreement that is generated from Broker Sumo. Somebody just called me this week and they're like, I never get my disbursement agreements. Well, we walked into her spam folder and all of them were there. So make sure if it's your first transaction, second transaction or something, that you go ahead and update Broker Sumo and just make sure you have everything in there. You're getting your disbursement agreement. She's like, I never get it. And so they were just going straight to her spam. So I was like, yeah, you need to mark that as not spam. And then every time there's closings this week, if I go in there and I see it, you should get caught unless you have something that you're missing. Your disbursement agreement should just come out. You shouldn't, happy path, you shouldn't even have to ask for it. Kaylina, are you asking a question now?
Yes, I just wanted to know if we were going to be able, like this whole PowerPoint presentation that you have are we going to be able to get access to this?
I will happily send it to you.
I would love that. Thank you. That was my only question.
Yes, I will happily send it to you. I don't know how I can, maybe I'll do a screenshot or something and then just share it with everybody that I can see. Yeah, I'll try to.
And the forms.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Does anybody remember how to do a screenshot on a Mac?
I think it's Command Shift 4 or Command Shift 3.
Yeah, it's Command Shift 3.
Thank you. All right. I have a Windows computer and a Mac sitting in front of me, so it gets a little hard. This is a repeat. So yeah, this is how you get paid. This is important information. I wanted everybody to make sure that they had that, but here really is question and answer time. And don't be afraid if you have like any, if you have a contract you're working through. If you, again, I like to make people guinea pigs and go ahead and get into your loop and answer your questions now, because I think it helps other people. So let me know what's going on. Questions. Kayleen, it looks like your hand is up again unless it wasn't lowered. There you go. Questions?
So I don't think it's necessary. Well, it might be a question. So I did a listing. I don't know if it was the listing or selling, but anyway, I did a loop, and I downloaded the agreement. So I have two in there. So I can't submit because, you know, you have one listing or one loop as required, like that one document, your agency agreement. And so my other document is actually completed from A to Z. So am I to submit both? Do you
Would you
understand
mind yes, and I think it's a great question and a great scenario for me to show everybody on the call. Do you mind if I pull it up?
You will not use me as a guinea pig. No, hold on. I'll tell you which one it is. Give me a second.
So to recap your question, there is circumstances where I'm gonna play with myself here. So right here. So let's use this as an example, as a scenario. Let's say that you've been working with a buyer, and me personally, I create a new loop for every house. That is totally up to you. I don't think that there's like some capacity of cloud space back there. Maybe I need to check with Jeremy on that, but I create a new loop for every address. So let's say you have a exclusive buyer brokerage agreement that is fully completed over there in this old loop, but then you come up here into this new loop, and then I'm asking you to put one in here, and you already have one. So you can't go any further than this system asking you to do a document that you know you have in there, but I'm still asking you for another one. I am the only one who can fix this, unfortunately. So yeah, if you give me the address, I can go and fix it for you. Any other questions? I'll wait for Tamika to give me her address. Oh, there's stuff in the chat. Hello, can you accept my computer's name rather than waiting, please? Oh, sorry, I would like presentation as well. Can you see the recorder? Please send it to me as well. I got y'all. As long as it's in that screenshot, I should be fine. So just go and find you all and just send it to you in an email as a recap. I'm gonna do that thing again. There it goes. Yeah, it just put it somewhere over there.
So it was the buyer brokerage agreement. So I added one to the loop, but of course you already had one in there. So I can't submit because it's like the required one is not done, but I have one that's been fully executed.
What's the address? It's
under her name, Cammie Luster.
Let me see if I spelled that right. And just FYI, not picking on you. It's a lot easier for me to find your situation if there is a address specifically tied to the transaction. It'll be a lot easier for me to look it up if you use the address as the label. Sometimes it picks it up if I go in. So say, for example, if I get a closings this week, say Cammie is ready to close this week, I can't find her. If I can't find it. If the address kind of shows up in this email that Jeremy sends me, like, hey, make sure all these folks are good, it might be a little bit hard for me to find Cammie than it will be for me to find, 1234 Jones Street. So just keep that in mind.
Typically, I do. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Typically, I do save it under that, but she called me. We had an agreement before even looking at a property.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this is an easy switch. Again, I'm playing with you now.
Okay.
You just come to loop name and you can go to use property address and save,
Okay.
which it's not tied to an MLS. Obviously it's not tied to one. Or you can use
Powder Springs. That's fine.
I don't remember how she spelled it, Luster. You can even do something like this, where as long as I put Powder Springs or something in there, it's gonna bring me to this person.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, thanks for letting me hop around in there. Again, I don't think people are as confident with .loop, so this is your time really to ask away. I could pick on you, Charmaine, here because you want me to review this right here. This contract is yours. Right here. I'm not gonna do it unless you give me permission to do it. But yeah, any other questions?
I have one last question.
Let's go.
Okay. Is there a way, and I hope I didn't miss this if you already said it. Is there a way, when I sent my contracts to, I don't know if you remember when you looked at my contracts before, the listing agent sent them back and she created a new loop. So you went in and renamed it. Okay, so I just looked for that unilateral termination agreement, and she did send it back, but it was in that loop. It was in the loop that she created. So is there a way for me to like move it to my loop?
What's the address? It was 570 Cedar, right?
It's 570 Cedar.
Okay. So when you are working with another agent that is .loop friendly, she got her loop, or she or he, and then you have your loop. So if you share things with them and then they share it back, it creates this like other loop. And I honestly don't know how to stop that. I think it's just the way .loop is designed. If you're working with an agent in our office, then if you want it, you don't really have to do that. If you guys make sure that everything is, up to date in one loop, that would be perfectly fine. But this is a situation where, and I add tags. You guys can't tag, but I may add tags to help me know, like, okay, ignore this one over here. But yeah, here's what you're looking for. And then your question, first, let's make sure it's right.
Yeah, that's it.
My screen is so big. Hold on. And then this is all in my way. Okay. So yes, this is perfect. You didn't have to do this side right here, but again, that's just extra clarity for me. So I'm gonna go back just to make sure I don't screw this up. But I didn't mean to go back like that. But if you have multiple loops and that you run into a situation like this, one, I always would recommend that you label one as listing or something that helps you realize when you're in loop that, hey, this is not my loop, this is someone else's loop, or this is the other loop from so-and-so. But if you come here and just make a copy, you want to preserve the signatures. If you do it as a .loop document, it'll probably kick out the ones that, I think her name was Kathy. Yeah, I think maybe, was the signatures that she put in there, whatever happened in .loop the last time. So if you want to do it as a flat PDF, then you should just be able to take the signatures with you. So make a copy as flat to loop, and then here I would search for the other one. So because you labeled them so perfectly, I know that this is not where I want to be right here. I want to be here. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back. And again, I have filters on. So every time I go back, it takes me to the filter. But I'll probably archive this now because it's over. And then here, I'm not going to worry about all the other stuff because, so you can see that this is the one that she had at first before Kathy signed. And then this one now that's there has Kathy's signature. So now I can go in here and I can archive this one. There's no need to have two of the same documents here. And I'm just gonna close this for you and mark this terminated. And then you can archive that and it's good to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And then FYI, you should still have a broker sumo for your terminated transactions. And I don't know if that's said enough, but just keep that in mind. Even for terminations, you should also still have a broker sumo, and then you can just change the transaction status to like canceled or something like that. I think it helps for Jeremy to also kind of keep tabs on like losses too. So regardless, if it goes under contract, get that broker sumo out there. If it cancels, it happens. I've had maybe 2 terminations this year. It happens, just can't go in there and cancel it. And it should be fine.
Okay.
Any other questions? Don't be afraid, because I feel like some questions will lead to other questions. And for me, I probably have so many examples, it would be hard for me to pull one out. But yeah, I don't want to pick on anybody, but any other questions? I always hear from Trinisa.
I know, I asked a lot of questions.
No, that's good. I'm glad. And I will send out a copy again. I took a couple screenshots, so I should know who was all here. But hopefully this was helpful to everybody. Again, if you want to ask me questions, sorry, let me move this out the way. This is my information. You can, some people privately just ping me on Ring Central. Ring Central sometimes logs me out. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but sometimes I just don't know what's going on in there. And then I come in there and be like, dang, y'all been talking. So you can choose Ring Central, and then if I'm logged in, I'll get it. But you can also just call me, text me. Some people who work with transaction coordinators regularly like to keep me in touch with their transaction coordinator, because sometimes, you know, they will be the ones going into dot loop on their behalf to try to fix all the things that need to be modified in order for everything to go smoothly. So yeah, feel free to share my information. If you have a transaction coordinator, feel free to share my information with them. Yeah, you can text me on either one of those numbers. It comes to the same phone. Some people just like me to have a Georgia number. You can email me if you want. Most of the time when people email me, it's like a more advanced contract issue. But I'm open to all ways to communicate. And again, Shawana is also a good resource for questions about contracts and things like that. I don't know about dot loop. I love dot loop, and I'm in it all the time, like from the time that I wake up to the time that I go to sleep. So if dot loop is a challenge area for you, definitely let me know. Some of the things that I talked about in the last class was you know, sharing documents back and forth, and how maybe some people, their signatures don't upload. So I can help you kind of avoid some of that stuff if that is something that happens to you on a regular basis. Your like signatures are disappearing, just let me know. We can work through that, get you nice and flowy when it comes to these contracts. Yeah, anything else come to mind? You guys are so quiet. All right, 2 more minutes. All right. I don't think anybody has any more questions at this point. So what I'll do is I will send out, I'll pull everybody's email addresses, and I'll send out a copy of this presentation, and I'll send out a copy of this here, this GAR 2020 with all my little markups and notes in it. I might make a couple adjustments. So what I might do is just kind of fill in. I feel like some of you guys are newer, So I think it will be helpful for you to have the contract information to put right in this section right here. But also understand that there are cards available in the office for you. So you can have a little handy card, you know, in your pocketbook or whatever, where you have the office code and everything. But again, remember, you can go and search for it pretty quickly just by going search office. And I think that's pretty much it. So again, thanks everybody for staying on, and hope this information was helpful for you. I will find the recording at some particular point, figure out how to share it, and then I'll share all the documents that I have as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.